Hello, everyone. This is Sheila Kumarhe of Ecstatic Birth, and I'm here today with Kyle Shepard for another conversation to transform birth. And today we're going to talk about what the hell do you do when it hurts so bad? Because let's get real, most women will experience pain during childbirth at some point. It's a very intense experience, and there are so many factors that play into the sensations that are going on in your body. And so when you have that intensity, you can actually use pleasure to support you through it. And I'm super excited to introduce you to Kyle. Kyle and I are in a training program together with Layla Martin, Sex, Love, and Relationship Coaching Training. And I was recently asking a question about my business and sharing about ecstatic birth in a group training. And all these women are, are typing in the chat, what? That's amazing. What do you mean ecstatic birth? And some women were like, that's not true. I had the most horrible experience ever. And Kyle was unabashedly, she typed in, well, when I gave birth, I was stroking my clitoris and my husband was very lightly stroking my nipples. And I was like, oh my God, I have to talk to you. So welcome, Kyle.
Thank you, Sheila. I'm so excited to be here. I'm such a fan of your work. I'm just so excited that this is a thing.
Totally a thing. And I'm really excited to talk to you because, this revolution in pleasurable birthing, it's about, it's obviously it's always been around. It's part of our physiology, but it's come more and more into the consciousness. And I would say the last 15 years. Okay. And I remember when I was birthing my children and I was looking for information about pleasurable birth, that daughter is now 14 years old. There was very little. There was one line in the 300-page book. There were no websites. There was nothing. Now you can Google, you could see images of women birthing in pleasure. And so when I found out that you had this experience 20 years ago, I could not wait to talk to you because first of all, how did you even have the consciousness to do this in your birth?
I don't know, but I'll tell you what I think. I think that it's such a primal, raw state when you're giving birth that you automatically go into human animal mode, or at least I did. And I listened to my body's wisdom. I also drew from past experiences with period cramps, of all things, just because that pain, that deep cervical pain that you experience during cramps, I know for me, pleasuring myself, pleasuring my nipples, my clitoris, anything around my pussy, my stroking my inner thighs, these types of things would alleviate my period cramps, along with smelling my husband. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit. But so I went into my birth knowing that somewhere in my body as a truth. During the birth, that pain is a metric fuck ton worse than period cramps, let's be honest. But it's the same place in your body. And so it did just occur to me to do what my body knows to do to help myself with that specific pain.
It's so cool to hear this, because what you're really saying is this lived in your body, this wisdom that you could support yourself through this intensity. It already lived in your body. It lived in your lived experience with your cycle, and it lived on some really primal level within you. You knew what to do that. So I think that's really exciting to hear, because there's a certain level of work that I really encourage women to do in preparing for an ecstatic birth. And that is really up-leveling your consciousness around birth, what it is, how it works. And it's really inspiring to hear your story, because you're saying, yes, and my body kind of knew that. Mm-hmm. So will you talk us through your birth a little bit in your words?
Sure. So I have 3 children, and my oldest will be 22 in May, which is kind of really special. That's how old I was when I gave birth to him. Mm-hmm. So yeah, almost 22 years ago, I gave birth to my son, Rowan. And in the room with me, other than my midwives, I had my sister, Rhonda, who for me embodies the feminine. She is soft and sweet and just loving. Mm-hmm. I lost my mom young, and so having my sister there just to be that loving warm yin presence was one of the greatest gifts. I also had my husband in the room, who barf alert is the love of my life and is just personifies masculinity for me. And that yin and yang that I had in the room with me, supporting me, was really profound and really a special part of the experience. I also had my very best friend, Christine, who had traveled. I live in Oregon. She had traveled from the Bay Area in California up to be with me. So I was surrounded by people who loved me and felt really empowered. Even as a young 22-year-old woman, I felt really empowered that this was my body. This was my time. I could do whatever I wanted to do. We had one of those delivery stories where I remember driving to the hospital, and my I don't know if it was my best friend or my husband, it was the three of us in the car, and one of them yelled out the window, "She's having a baby," because we were trying to get around traffic. And so it was total like Hollywood moment. But made it to the hospital, made it through my, all my contractions and all of the pain and fear, and again, also pleasure and excitement. I got to watch him being born. I asked for a mirror, so I got to watch the birthing process. He was a big boy. He was 9 pounds, 14 ounces. And I'm a fairly small woman. I'm 5'2" something, just not that large. And plus I was really young and first baby. So it was a big baby to come out of a small person. I had active labor for, I think, probably about 5 or 6 hours. So, relatively speaking, not that bad. Mm-hmm. But that's my birthing experience. I think that along the line is where the pleasure, my own desire for pleasure, kicked in. Mm-hmm. I had prepped my husband ahead of time that I might want him to help me stroke my nipples. There's like such a link between your nipples and all of your sexual organs that just for me, just touch me here, I feel it there. And so, throughout the process, and this goes for all 3 of my births, but I'm focusing on the birth of my son because it was the first one, and it was when my body just really told me what to do. So so throughout I was touching myself, my husband was touching me, I was grabbing my husband and wanting to smell him.
And you used this for all 3 births? Did I hear you say that?
I did.
Oh no, we froze. Okay.
Can you see me
we
now?
just like froze up for a second, but we're back.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I see you perfect now. So I have so many things I want to ask you. The first thing I want to ask you is, I know that a lot of women feel really like uncomfortable about, integrating sexuality into birth. There's like, first of all, there's just so much we have to heal around our own sexuality, but then there's this feeling of like, oh my God, there are other people in the room. How could I like stroke my clitoris? I'm curious how you navigated that. Did you talk to your midwives ahead of time? I know you said you spoke to your husband. How did it feel with all those people to be like actively, really consciously accessing your sexual energy?
I don't know to this day how I felt comfortable enough to do that. So I don't know the answer to that, because I have similar conditioning to a lot of people that sexuality is private and shameful. And well, I wouldn't say shameful. I lost you for a second. I'm back. But it was really just when I was in that much pain, and this was my time. I mean, I'm the mother, I'm giving birth. Everyone in the room is here to support me, my family members and the midwives. So I think just really owning the moment as my own was how I was able to feel like, fuck it, this is what I think is going to help me and feel good, so I'm going to do it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I want to highlight like the genius. I know that this was like deep body wisdom coming forward for you, but I want to highlight, like, from a scientific perspective, the genius of what you were doing. So first of all, like, pleasure, I say it all the time, and I'll just say it again. It's the most holistic birthing tool there is. If you're consciously using pleasure during your birth, what you're doing is stimulating oxytocin flow. Oxytocin is the governing hormone of labor. So when you go to the hospital and they're like, oh, your labor is too pokey, it's not progressing enough, and they give you a Pitocin drip, what that is, that's a synthetic version of oxytocin. So stimulating your nipples, stimulating your clitoris, this is your body's natural way of like upping oxytocin flow, which makes your labor progress much faster. Added benefit, it feels really good. So you might have like all of this intensity in your body that you're translating as pain, but then you start adding pleasure and you're making your experience more pleasurable. So even if you're experiencing pain, as Kyle did, you can use pleasure to support you in your birth and to make your birth feel better all around. So this is so genius. And then there's this other piece, which, you know, you were talking about, like, you pushed out this 9-pound plus baby out of like your little body. When your tissues are really, really engorged, your body is more able to like open wide without that burning sensation, without tearing or ripping. And so stimulating your clitoris, especially during like the pushing phase, can help your body open and stretch wide open for even a 9-pound baby. So this is so genius all around. And then you also mentioned smelling your husband. What like, was that just during your birth you would lean in, or what was that about?
Yeah, I would lean into him, or I would grab him and just want to smell him, especially his armpits and his neck. And I think I actually had him for my second baby, my daughter Quinn. I think I asked him to bring a dirty shirt for me to just have nearby. So yeah.
So though programmable. Oops, did I blip out?
You froze for a moment, but did you hear me? I said I smelled him and grabbed him and asked him for a shirt. And
yeah, and I was starting to say that this was so genius also because, first of all, like, your body has memory. So if you associate like your husband's smell with like yumminess and coziness and feeling safe and feeling protected, or even if you associate it with like orgasming or pleasure, then this also stimulates oxytocin flow. And then scent has the added benefit of really helping you access your primal brain. And especially if you're accessing a scent that does help you feel safe, it's an indication to your primal brain that you're safe. And, you know, birth, like, one of the big things in birth is fear. There's a lot of fear, especially your first birth, fear of the unknown. What's going to happen? What's going to happen to me, my body, my baby? What's it going to be like to be a mother, right? There are all these fears. And so this was such an instinctually genius move on your part, because to smell something that like your body intuitively connects with safety signals to your primal brain that like you're safe, all is well. And in that, it allows your body to more deeply surrender and relax and open. So cool to hear this. And the other thing that I'm like so excited to talk to you about is, usually, you know, like, I'm talking to women that have just given birth or gave birth like maybe a year or two ago. And it is very rare that I have the opportunity to speak to someone who had this experience 20 years ago. And the reason I'm really excited about this, Kyle, and to hear about how this like experience has reverberated into your life as a mother, as a woman, how it informs you till this day, is because it's my contention that when a woman really owns her birth experience, whatever the experience looks like, whatever, you know, it doesn't have to look perfect, but she really owns it and is able to support herself through that like deep connection to her inner wisdom, that it is so good, not just for her and her baby in that moment, but it is so good for her, like, as she walks into motherhood, right? This is like a rite of passage. And unfortunately, so many women, including myself after my first birth, walk into that new phase of their life as a new mother feeling, you know, victimized, disempowered, traumatized. Their bodies let them down in some way. They failed in some way. There's a lot of like negativity, unfortunately, that a lot of women walk into new motherhood with. And so I felt the difference between my first birth and my next two births, and it is profound. And I'm so interested to hear for you what you feel like the gifts that you got from birthing your children in this way were, and how you have felt that inform, you know, who you are as a mother, as a woman, in whatever way you aspire to share.
Yeah, I love that. And I just, first of all, want to really honor and validate those feelings that I had certain of those feelings too, feeling disempowered, feeling, not like I could have done better and things like that. But I'll tell you, really, ultimately, I was really proud of my births, all of them. I felt so connected to women throughout time, to my ancestral line, to myself as an animal, giving birth to my little cubs. And I mean, my children are 21, 17, and 15. And I can still just transport back to the moments of all three of their births, my connection to that moment, my connection to just the collective feminine, to my own body, to that baby that I was bringing into the world. And it still can just settle me right down no matter what I'm doing. I can be in the boardroom and I can get there. And I only have my own lived experience, but I can tell you that I feel allowing myself to become that intimate with the moment of birth, that, well, the whole experience leading up to it and then the birth itself. I think that I created this intimacy with that moment that has lasted in my relationship with all three of my children. My 15-year-old Carmen, she and I will walk around the store holding hands. I mean, we're very close. And I just think that empowering myself as a woman in that way has helped me in literally every area of my life. I think that there's still, to this day, there's not enough spoken about, kind of that link between pain and pleasure, for one thing, and also just how to empower women who are giving birth. You hear about women who are having C-sections that they don't necessarily want, having drugs at the hospital that they don't want given to them, and just feeling that lack of empowerment over their own birth process. That's why I'm so excited about the work that you do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really, really important for women to speak out and share. And I'm curious, were you able to share about your birth experiences 20 years ago? Like, did you feel like that was something that other women could hear from you?
Not so much, no. No,
Yeah.
some of my close friends, but it wasn't something that I felt very safe talking to people about.
Yeah, and this is like a really important point, because I think we're reaching this turning point now slowly in our culture where it is becoming more and more acceptable to share positive birth stories. So like, while ecstatic birth or orgasming during birth is not necessarily like a new thing, it is built into our biology. It is relatively new that women feel like they can talk about it. And I can't tell you like how many women have, heard me speak, let's say, and come up to me after and said, something, I had an orgasm during my birth and I've never told anyone. And I've been so ashamed. I thought I did something wrong. And that's devastating. So it's Kyle, thank you so much for sharing your experience. And it's really, that's one of the reasons I do these. I really want women to hear other women's stories and know that there's like this great big wild spectrum. And it doesn't mean, to have an ecstatic birth, it doesn't necessarily mean that like every detail of your birth is like perfect and painless, but it's the feeling that you shared, that feeling of like just being really proud and like being able to like stand in that and to own that and to know that that informs you in your life as you move forward as well.
Yeah.
So thank
beautiful.
you so much for coming and sharing. Is there anything that you wanted to share that maybe you haven't had a chance to?
No, just keep doing what you're doing. I am so happy that this work is in the world and that you're the one bringing the magic forth, one of the ones, and just, I'm so grateful for this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming and sharing and allowing me to like question you and talk about it. This is like my joy and passion. And I think it's really, really inspiring for expectant moms to hear what's possible and how you can, like your birth, you can use pleasure to support you. And the nice thing about that is it will, just by using pleasure to support you through the intensity of childbirth, you're up-leveling your experience. And it's really that simple. It's really that simple, because you're giving yourself a positive sensation. You're giving yourself something that feels really good. And so just by virtue of that, you're already having a much better experience than you would have had without that. And obviously there's so many different levels. And so, of what you can experience, and more often than not, birth is never what you expect it to be. But to just take away this piece of wisdom that Kyle shared today, that came from her own innate body, that, I can just literally support myself with the experience of pleasure, sensual or otherwise. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Kyle.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Sheila.
Yeah, lots of love. And thank you everyone for watching. Till next time.